All right, take a second and look at this on screen because this loader instantly feels premium the moment it appears. We're on a full screen, deep dark background with zero distractions, and right in the center there's this smooth animated SVG loader that feels more like a character than a spinner. The eyes rotate fluidly around the circle, scaling and even blinking in a really natural way, giving the animation personality and life. The motion is buttery smooth with clean easing so nothing feels robotic or abrupt. Then the mouth animation kicks in, drawing and erasing itself using stroke animations that feel expressive and perfectly timed with the eyes. On top of that, we've got layered blue tones with a subtle gradient mask that adds depth without being flashy, making the whole thing feel modern and professional. It's sharp at any size, lightweight, and built entirely with SVG and CSS. No JavaScript at all. This is the kind of loader you'd expect in a high-end app or polished dashboard. And in this video, we're going to build this exact animation from scratch, step by step. So let's jump in and get started. But before starting, please like this video to motivate me to create more new creative tutorial videos and subscribe to the channel for new videos. Let's start. In this section, we are starting with the HTML structure only. Inside the body of the document, we place everything right in the center of the page. The main element we are working with here is an SVG. This SVG has a fixed height and width and a view box that gives us a drawing space to work in. We also give it a class so we can style and animate it later with CSS. Inside the SVG, we begin with a def section. This area is used to define reusable pieces that do not show up on the screen by themselves. The first thing we define is a clip path. This clip path represents the eyes of the loader. Inside that clip path, we create two circles. Each circle has a radius and a center point, and each one is rotated and translated so it ends up positioned like an eye. We also give each circle its own class so we can animate them independently. Still inside the def section, we define a linear gradient. This gradient moves from top to bottom and transitions from black to white. This gradient will be used later to control visibility during the animation. Right after that, we define a mask. Inside the mask, we place a rectangle that fills the entire SVG area and uses the gradient we just defined. This mask will let parts of the loader appear and disappear smoothly as the animation runs. All right, everybody. Continuing through the HTML, after the definitions, we move into the main drawing groups of the SVG. We start with a group element that sets up shared stroke behavior. Here we define things like the stroke dash pattern, the stroke width, and the line cap style. This makes sure all of the shapes inside behave consistently. Inside this group, we place another group that holds the first visible version of the loader. We begin with a rectangle. This rectangle is clipped using the eye clip path we defined earlier, so only the eye shapes are visible. The rectangle spans the top half of the SVG and is filled with a blue color using HSL. Below that rectangle, we add another group. This group has no fill and uses the same blue color for the stroke. Inside it, we draw two circles. These circles represent the mouth shapes. One circle is rotated upside down and the other is left in its normal orientation. Each circle has a class name, so we can animate the stroke later to create the mouth movement effect. Now we move on to the next section of the SVG. Still inside the main stroke group, we add another group that uses a mask. This mask is the one we defined earlier with the gradient, and it allows this second version of the loader to fade in and out smoothly. Inside this mask group, we repeat a similar structure to what we just saw. We start with another rectangle that is clipped to the eye shapes. Just like before, it spans the upper half of the SVG, but this time it uses a different HSL color, giving us a second tone. After that rectangle, we include another group for the mouth shapes. Again, there is no fill and the stroke uses the same color as the rectangle. Inside this group, we place two circles, one rotated and one not. These circles match the earlier mouth elements and are also given class names so they can be animated later. This layered setup is what allows the loader to switch colors smoothly during the animation. At this point, we are finishing up the SVG structure. All of the groups we created are nested correctly. So once the masked group is complete, we close out that group and then close the main stroke group as well. This wraps up all of the visual elements that make up the loader, including the eyes and the mouth shapes in both color layers. After closing those group elements, we close the SVG itself. This marks the end of the scalable graphic that will be animated later using CSS. Finally, once the SVG is closed, we close the body tag. That completes the HTML portion of this example, and all of the visual structure for the loader is now in place. All right, everybody. Now we move into the CSS, starting right from the top. First, we select the body element. We set its height to 100 viewport height so it fills the entire screen. We turn it into a flex container, then center everything horizontally and vertically. This makes sure our loader sits perfectly in the middle of the page. We also give the body a very dark background color using a hexadecimal value, which creates strong contrast with the loader. Next, we target the loader class. This controls the size of the SVG. We set both the width and the height to 8M units, so it scales nicely with font size and stays responsive. After that, we select the eye and mouth elements together. These include loader eye1, loader eye2, loader mouth 1, and loader mouth 2. All of these elements share the same animation timing. So we apply an animation that runs for 3 seconds, uses an ease and out timing function, and loops infinitely. Then we specifically target the two eye elements. For these, we define the transform origin at 64 pixels on both the X and Y axis. This ensures that when the eyes rotate, they rotate around the center of the SVG instead of around themselves. Finally, in this section, we override behavior for individual parts. The second eye gets a different animation name, so it can move differently from the first eye. The first mouth is assigned its own animation as well. The second mouth also gets its own animation, and we initially hide it by setting its visibility to hidden. This prepares it to appear later during the animation sequence. Now we finish things off with the animation keyframes. We start with the keyframes for eye 1. At the beginning of the animation, the eye is rotated negative 260 degrees and translated upward by 56 pixels. At the 50% and 60% marks, we change the timing function to a cubic Bezier curve and rotate the eye to negative 40 degrees, keeping the same translation and a scale of 1. At the end of the animation, the eye rotates to 225 degrees, stays translated upward by 56 pixels, and scales down to 0.35. Next, we define the keyframes for eye 2. At the start, it uses the same rotation and translation as eye 1. At 50%, the eye rotates to 40 degrees, is translated upward by 56 pixels, rotated back by 40 degrees, and scaled to 1. At 52.5%, it keeps the same transforms, but scales on the y-axis to 0, creating a blink effect. From 55% through 70%, we apply a cubic Bezier timing function and return the eye to a full scale of 1. At the end, the eye rotates to 150 degrees, stays translated upward by 56 pixels, and scales down to 0.4. After that, we move to the mouth 1 animation. At the start, we use an ease and timing function, set the stroke dash array to 0, followed by 351.86, and set the stroke dash offset to 0. At 25%, we switch to an ease out timing function, set the stroke dash array to 175.93, followed by 351.86, and keep the dash offset at 0. At 50%, we use a steps timing function with one step at the start, keep the same dash array, move the dash offset to negative 175.93, and make the element visible. From 75% to the end of the animation, we hide the element by setting visibility to hidden. Finally, we define the keyframes for mouth 2. At the start, we use a steps timing function with one step at the end and keep the element hidden. At 50%, we switch to an ease in-out timing function, make the element visible, and set the stroke dash offset to 0. By the end of the animation, we move the stroke dash offset to negative 351.86. That completes all of the CSS animations and finishes the loader setup. And now we can see that the loader is working pretty well. And we are at the end of today's tutorial video. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. See you in the next cool video, bro. Have fun.